This review will be slightly more shrouded than usual. A little eerie? Probably not as much if you actually give this album a listen. So bear with me. Well is the newest album released by Recondite. Yes, this is another album that probably is not very mainstream, but I felt like I needed to talk about it all the same. This was quite the unique experience for me. I remember sitting down thinking, okay, this is going to be electronic. I wonder what it's going to lead to. And I remember kind of being a little bored by this, but I think my expectations were set very, very poorly, mostly because I had no idea what to expect from this artist beforehand. Then I give it a little bit of time, and I found what I think is the right time of day, or at least the right situation to find myself of the time of day to listen to this album. This is an eerie album in a way that will give you goosebumps if you pay attention and give it the right situation to do so. It's going to affect you if you let it. This is one of those things why I love EDM. The more I listen to it, the more opportunities, the more ideas, the more atmospheres, the more worlds this music seems to create, fill, and kind of interpret in a way. If any of you are like me who looks for music to kind of fill in the music perfect for each situation of the human experience, this is one that you could add, although it's probably not a life situation you wish you could be a part of. But then again, we've all probably experienced some kind of movie that would be perfect for this kind of ambiance this album gives. I actually wrote down several situations where I think this album would be appropriate. Firstly, probably for the most common situation we all potentially could find ourselves being in at one point in our life. If you find yourself driving really late at night after a trip or heading toward a destination for some kind of vacation, and you happen to be the one who is given the burden of driving for the latter portion of the day, latter portion of the night, actually. And if you feel at some point you are almost tempted to count sheep and get the Z's, put this album on. I promise you it will shiver right up your spine and keep you attentive for the duration of the album. Another imaginary sphere. Imagine a haunted NASA station. Yeah, it's essentially a really uneasy melancholy that kind of creeps up to you, kind of like the monster in It Follows. But in this case, you know the music isn't going to necessarily harm you, but there is a part of you that fears what it will do to you after you have listened to it, if it's going to create any after effects because your psyche or some emotional portion of your soul holds on to that new experience of questionable and uncomfortable fright. This album fits perfectly at the climax of a subtle apocalypse. If any of you happen to like art, this is probably perhaps the really dark pictures of Mark Rothko. If you look that up, not the bright pictures, the dark ones. The dark ones. Based on everything that I have mentioned in this review, I'm not sure how inviting it's going to persuade anyone to give this a listen. So rather than do that, let me share 2 clips of songs that would give you an idea of what this kind of sounds like. The title track, Dwell, kicks off it pretty good. You kind of know what you're getting into. It's just creepy throughout. It actually made me think, this would be perfect for the Dark Five. It's another YouTube channel that talks about a lot of kind of creepy, borderline conspiracy theory oriented things, but they're things that make you think, wow, that happened here on Earth. I don't know if I want to live here anymore. The next song I would like to highlight is Black Letter. This song is kind of similar, but it adds a very distinct drum beat to it, which kind of makes it progress forward maybe a little bit faster. The tempo is probably not that much different. I will say I think the first third of this album is basically perfect. I think it sets exactly the setting that it needs to. Following after that, you can probably create a couple of nitpicks with some of the production or some of the direction some of these songs could go toward. The song where I would say that probably affects me most is Mirror Games, and personally, I think that song could have been my favorite, but it does add a couple of elements that I didn't feel were necessary, and then the song would have actually held itself pretty well. The song Cure has a lot of sounds that sound like sonars and just kind of a unsettling hum to it. Actually, more like a broken hum, if you can imagine that. You'll have to check the song out. And then kind of towards the end, it just kind of feels like it becomes a little bit more familiar. But again, if you're not familiar with music like this, and if you can psychologically handle this kind of music, maybe it'll affect you the same way as the beginning did. Like I probably was trying to imply at the beginning, this album is not meant for probably the pure enjoyment for the average listener, but it's one where I feel like, you could probably get a thing or two out of this with a lot of imagination if you are open to it. I could see using a couple of these songs for a very unique haunted house during Halloween. I think I will plan on keeping a couple of these songs in my future playlist to be able to mess around with people. It probably will become quite unsettling. So with that, after having listened and reviewed this album with production of 91%, creativity 86%, expression and lyrics 93%, I'm going to give this album a yeah. Like I was saying before, not so common for the average listener. I probably won't repeat listen to this album very often, but I am going to give it credit for what it has done. And again, I could see a certain setting revisiting some of these songs and maybe creating my own ambiance with it. And just in case you weren't aware, the word recondite for the artist, the literal translation is little known. And a lot of people fear what they do not know. Just thought I would add that tidbit right there. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. And remember, if you want to discover, promote, and review the best in entertainment, remember to like, comment, follow, subscribe, share all that good stuff down below so you can get that yes in your life. See you next time.